You're listening to the Alex Wolf Podcast. Interesting conversations about innovation, economics, culture, and history for the independent thinkers and curious minds. I'm your host, Alex Wolf.
Hi, thank you for tuning in today. I want to use this episode to talk about enough being enough. When is enough enough? And when will you let ordinary life be enough for you? When will we reach a point where our technology is enough? And just kind of exploring what enough is for us as individuals and us as a culture. So I've been talking about this danger and illusion of growth, sort of this toxic growth, this idea or this pressure most of us have to feel like we must grow at all costs always. And this idea that maybe not. Maybe there is a pattern of growth that's not so much focused on upward mobility in its entirety, but seeing growth more as this sustaining cycle, something that goes around versus that something goes up to no end. And so I want to talk about today, where is that end? When do we stop for us as individuals? How do we stop? And how that looks different for everybody. Now, I understand for the very growth-minded people that some of this language might seem kind of like dismissive or kind of like discouraging of growth. And I don't want to make it seem that way. This is less about trying to get people to be lazy or trying to get people to not pursue their goals. This is more for the people who have been pursuing that growth so much and have grown so much and are now at a point where they want to figure out what I call a point of preservation. So people who have already explored what it's like to push themselves, what it's like to go through a metamorphosis, and now feel like to continue a random, unorganized growth would be to kind of sabotage their well-being and are more interested in, again, preserving some type of point of preservation, of sustainability, and building a lifestyle that's less about the upward mobility and more about day-to-day, month-to-month, year-to-year, wholesome preservation of certain aspects of their life that just make them have a decent life. This is not about, living your dreams. This is not about trying to, again, just kind of pursue vague ideas. It's about sustaining what makes you happy. So when I look around, when I talk to most people, when I'm on Twitter, I use the words like culture, our culture. And sometimes people ask, well, what do you mean when you say our culture? When I say our culture, I mean mainstream culture, the general temperature you will feel when absorbing mainstream media through social media, Twitter, Instagram, or the news or things like that. And when I have that observation, I feel the general census I get is that most people are unhappy because they are using an advertisement or a music video or some kind of image as a frame of reference to measure their life up to. It might be a combination of images, it might be new images, it might be old ones. I know in my experience growing up with TV, I was very much felt like music videos, what were my sort of frame of reference of like what life was supposed to look like, the amount of excitement it has, the expectation of beauty. And so that's what I used. And, obviously it's no mystery or secret that eventually I realized those images were not worth pursuing for me personally. And I bring that up because images are very emotional, and depending on how young you are or naive or just media illiterate you are, they can be misleading. Because what happens is they stir up so much emotion that if you are not mature enough to handle that emotion, it will really warp your perception of reality, of success. And I often talk about how liberal we are with just sort of showcasing images all over the place. I mean, we've never been in a media climate where there are this many images of us. I don't think it's bad, but I think it is something to be sensitive to, as always, because the nature of emotional and misleading images is that they encourage many of us to pursue really vague goals and feelings, which can turn into a trap really fast, because for every second we don't feel the feelings that we want through these projected images, we feel inadequate and we pursue even more work or even more just effort in trying to obtain this sort of artificial, or not even just artificial, but I think again, project it. Because when the image is shown to us, we are filling in the blanks of what we think this image really means. I know for women, it often feels, and for men too, feels like, oh, well, if someone looks like this, then they must always be happy or they must always feel like this. And so I'm bringing that up because when we are using images as this type of frame of reference, I'm not talking about for beauty. I'm not talking about for inspiration. I'm talking about for like this really kind of hardcore measuring stick that that we use. When we use images like that, it is it's like trying to eat a bowl of cereal from printing out a picture of it and eating the picture, because you've lost a whole dimension. And I have a YouTube video. My first actual media literacy YouTube video was about the effects of what I call split second communication, which breaks down understanding images as literal, split second frames of made up worlds, and how little or how much gets lost in trying to communicate with that. Obviously, I'm a writer, so I have my opinions about that. But again, I want to be really careful. I'm not anti-image. I actually love fashion editorials. I have a growing love for film. I see the beauty in the art form of images. And again, I'm not talking about that. I'm talking about the measuring stick of it. So, or people using it as a measuring stick and not just as a source of rejuvenation or a muse. So, when you do start feeling happy, when you do stop, unhappy being just kind of like decent, content. Happy, I don't like to use so much because happy is a little too extreme on the spectrum of emotions that I think have preservation. What I mean is that on a spectrum of emotions, happy is a little bit leaning towards one side. And this is not about always being happy, but content is a better word because there's this neutrality to it. It's not so much about being super happy or super joyful. It's just about being cool, just being chilling, right? In the middle. So when you do start feeling that contentment, when you stop focusing on the toxic growth and you start what you start to do is you focus on your point of preservation. Your point of preservation is the lifestyle choices, what you eat, who you hang out with, what media you consume, how many hours you sleep, what clothes you wear, okay? It's the lifestyle that will sustain, not pressure, not squeeze, not force, but sustain your wellness and humanity. It takes time of getting to know yourself to really get a clear picture of what your point of preservation is, because everyone has a different one. And the issue is that when we have so many images barraging our peripheral, when we have so many ideas about what life is supposed to look like and feel like, what success is supposed to feel like, it's really hard to form your own opinion and stick with it, or know what your definition of success is and stick with it, because every other second you have different definitions that seem really good. So you want to try them on. You want to say, hey, what? I'm not doing enough. I should be doing more. Look at what so-and-so did. You're going to hear, oh, so-and-so just made $1 million, or so-and-so just got this accomplishment. And well, of course, what our ego does, because our ego is the social climber, part of our consciousness, it immediately is thinking that, hey, if this made them look happy, then it'll make me feel happy. It's very different. There's a lot of people who look happy. And maybe they are, but you have no guarantee that it will make you feel happy. It might be worth exploring, and that's a decision that's ultimately up to you. But the issue is, if you don't take the time out to figure out what is my point of preservation, what lifestyle will sustain my overall wellness and humanity, then the way I see it is like you are an expanded, almost like a pimple. Pimples get expanded because they are infected. And what happens when something is infected? It's like dripping, it's weeping with all this stuff, because it's been expanded to a point that it breaks. A lot of us feel like the point of life is to expand forever and to grow forever. But what I keep making the note of, and you don't got to take my word for it, just look around, is that everything has a point of preservation. Things know when to ripen. They know when they are ripe. And the issue is that we feel, oh, well, after I'm ripe, I'm gonna die. People are getting in their feelings in my DMs when I was talking about this. Like, well, what are you saying? I'm done with? Interesting. You think that after someone has reached a state of ripeness or this peak, that, you might as well throw them in the garbage. Well, there's a whole stage of life, stages, in which after you have reached a certain peak, what you have to offer, and I already said this, What you have to offer is nutrition for the other fruit or whatever. Well, maybe that's not so fun because you want to be the peak, the star all the time, because we have a culture that only treats ripe things as the best. But I spoke about why that's a danger. And I spoke about how ageism is just going to backfire on any of us. The point I'm making, and the irony is, most of y'all ain't hit y'all peak yet. I don't know why y'all getting mad. Y'all haven't even started, if we're being honest. So I don't know why everyone's, well, it wasn't everyone, but you know what I mean. I'm like, okay, you're telling me a lot about yourself by sort of showing me your emotions about this. So what I'm saying is that if you are not careful, if you don't know what your point of preservation is, your point will look different than mine. It will look different than your lovers and your friends. It will look different from your family. That's the point. It's almost like a fingerprint. But if you don't know what it is, then you might get caught up in this hamster wheel type grow, expand, and leak and break. Because I don't know where you're going, but you're going so far that now it can't be held. It can't be handled. And then there's all this stuff blocking your view that you don't even know where you're going. You don't even know what you're doing. You're like, I don't know. I got into this because so-and-so made it look like it was going to be fun. Okay. So you just want to be careful, because enough will never be enough when you take that route. It will never be enough. The point of preservation is less about what your mind is saying, your ego, who is it's the part of your consciousness that really wants you to climb, and it's okay. You can let it chill for a little bit, but ego will not create a point of preservation, because the ego just wants to get really, really high. You can let it rock, but I'm all about, okay, well, how you don't want to identify completely with that, right? Point of preservation is less about your ego and more about your neural receptivity. Your neural receptivity, your sensitivity. Obviously, one of my favorite words. You have senses. You are a receptor. You are an environment. You have an incredible heart that not only acts as this fascinating pump of blood that's keeping you alive, but it feels things. It feels sincerity and joy. It feels empathy. It's alive, right? Okay, that's just your heart. Then you have this whole membrane of skin, our biggest organ. A lot of people perceive our skin as a shield. It is a membrane. It is in direct contact and relationship and response to your environment. It sweats. It gets chills when it's cold. It processes airs and oils. Okay, this is very complex shit. You have eyes, right? You have ears. These are very sophisticated and sensitive parts of your biology. They know when enough is enough. Your mind won't. Your mind will just have this gaping hole. But once you become more sensitive, you know when you've had enough food. You know when you've had enough sun. You know when you've had enough sleep. You know when you've had enough affection. You know because you are tapped in and you are sensitive to this neural receptivity. Some people don't have some of these neural capabilities. Some people are born blind. Some people are born deaf. Some people can't feel. They're born numb. Wow. You know, I hate to sound like the high friend at 3 a.m. saying like, wow, it's so cool, but we're going there because it's December of 2020. And if you have not felt the miracle of ordinary life and basic health, then you're living under a rock, aka you're not sensitive. You want to have some accomplishments? Great. I'm not saying you shouldn't. What I'm saying is, when will enough be enough for you? When will ordinary life reawaken as the miracle it is for you? Because, wow. You know, sometimes I feel this pressure to tie this into tech philosophy, and I'm like, oh, well, the people are here to listen to tech philosophy, but I'm just like, isn't it obvious how this is connected? How through the way we believe this technology should be used, we see how we are exploiting the senses. Back to a tweet I wrote a few years ago. So I'm a nerd like you, right? And I remember a few years ago, Natural History Museum, I would go by myself, and it was really a self-love thing. It was just like being in the city and just, you know, really having days where there's nothing to do, right? And just really wanting to feel life. So I would go to Natural History Museum, love the fucking Natural History Museum, like memories of being a kid, crazy expositions. And one of the exhibits that I went to go see is it was about senses. It was totally underwhelming, which is so funny, but I went anyway. And it was talking about just your senses, your 5 senses. I'm like, oh yeah, that's my thing. Paid extra, all this crap. And I share the story because it was winter and it was starting to turn into spring, and I love seasons. I feel like we all love seasons. Seasons are such a metaphorical language of wisdom. They have every secret you've ever wanted to know. Seasons. I mean, the character of seasons, and I truly believe that the seasons you're born in reflect your nature, right? So I'm a spring baby, and spring babies are they're first, right? They really love to be there. They symbolize this bud, the fertilization, the meeting of the egg and the sperm, this big bang, right? The universe started with this collision, and spring represents that time. And so I've always resonated with that part of nature because I'm a doer, right? I love to take action and actually do things and not talk about them all the time. So I had been going out for walks in the winter, and I loved it because I was enjoying the crispness of the air. I was enjoying the snow. I was enjoying how empty the park was, and it was beautiful. And then right around spring, I noticed that the park got really fragrant, like overpoweringly. And I think because I could smell it because I had been going to the park in the winter, and just the absence of it, I understood how absent that fragrance was before. And I could smell the grass literally growing from the fucking ground, and I could smell like even the barks, and I could smell spring. And I was emotional because, you know, whatever, I'm a freaking, you know, weirdo poetic scientist wannabe girl, and I had tweeted the scam, and I just reposted this. The scam is they don't teach you each season has a scent. You out here chasing numbers but can't smell spring. And that was probably because I got back home and I probably went on Twitter and somebody was like, the future of VC is this, and like top 10 ways to blah, blah, blah. And I was like, oh my God. All of you guys, like, do you go outside? I have these moments of just like, ugh, is all you care about these numbers? And mind you, I love business, but there's a point of preservation where I'm like, I need this much of this, right? And then the next tweet I put was, the sky being blue isn't enough for you, is it? You need God to put on a better show for you. And that's just the feeling I get when I have made a decision to be very sensitive about my environment and my body as a receptor of these senses. And I'm like, that's a miracle that you can just appreciate today, that the sky is blue. That's it. If you can't, I always feel my radar for like, am I feeling life, is if I can be impressed with the sky. If there are days where I'm like, the sky, whatever, then I know I'm off. Then I know I'm not tapped into a type of neuroreceptivity that turns life into enough. The sky being blue has to be enough for me. If I ever get lost and think it isn't, then I've lost the place. And obviously it does make it harder for me to relate to others because you think that's a conversation that gets brought up in my client meetings. For the most part, no. And that's why I love my audience, because we are these, proud weirdos kind of scouting this earth and being proud, curious minds and scientists and artists and business people who are enchanted by ordinary life. So when you have this, the point I'm making is the lack of neuroreceptivity. When you aren't sensitive, when you can't see the miracle of orange juice pouring in a glass, when you can't see the miracle of the smile of your family member who's still alive. Again, sometimes it really just takes the absence of these things. It takes the absence of someone, takes the absence of certain joys before when they come back, you're like, holy crap. You mean to tell me it was being in a room with air conditioning or, weather or something? Again, seasons, weather, environment is very sacred to me because environment shape behavior. So if you are in an environment that literally is just comfortable, if the temperature is comfortable, that is a miracle. If you think I'm overdoing it, then spend the day in a cold ass room. Go outside, spend the day outside. You think I'm over exaggerating? Don't turn on the air conditioner when it's hot. Air conditioner, invention, technology. Okay. So also, black man invented the air conditioner. But I think that it's just, duh, what do you think I'm going to say? I think that is just very important that we're sensitive. Life is not supposed to look like an advertisement or a music video. You're not doing anything wrong if life doesn't look like an advertisement. What do I mean? I'm talking about advertisements are meant to literally market products and services. I love them, but they're not a model for life. The reality is advertisements are supposed to look like life. It's the other way around. That's a philosophical preference. I think that advertisements should look like life. It also depends on what you're selling, but for the most part, right? By monitoring your stimuli, life will reawaken and ordinary things will fulfill you. Monitoring your stimuli. So, right now in your environment, what's moving really fast? What's draining you? You get to a certain point where you become so sensitive, and I know my fashion and my designers are gonna hear me when I say this. Colors drain you. It could be a red something in the corner and you're like, ugh, get it away from me. And that's when you go to diva level. But no judgment there. Monitoring your stimuli, the clothes on your body. Are they comfortable? Is something too tight? Is something not breathing? Fabric is so, I want to say, alive, but it's not so much that it's alive. It's so, it has so much character. Is it breathing on your body? Is it letting you breathe? Monitoring your stimuli. Yeah, that's what is your clothes. It's the sounds around you. So, when it comes to really trying to figure out, okay, what is my point of preservation? How can I start to develop this? The first thing you want to do is you want to live a life based on your rules, your values, your beliefs. Most of us do not know what our values are. It sounds pretty, it sounds cute. Oh yeah, my values, okay. You might be surprised when you do the work and you see what your values are. I like to think that you don't choose your values, they choose you. You don't know what they are. They show you what they are through feeling like crap. I started to get a better idea of what my values were after I realized what was making me feel kind of like empty, or just what was making life feel meaningless. So using that and saying, okay, well, I know I don't want these things, and I know I don't want these things. But your values kind of reveal themselves to you, and they're really your rules. It's your Declaration of Independence. It's your whatever. It's your document of commandments. It is your rules. You can write them. You can doodle them. You can do whatever the hell. It's your rules. They might not always be easy to follow. You might have obstacles, but no one can stop you from making them and using them as a guide. The other thing you can do is make sure your schedule reflects your priorities. Since most of us are using images, inherited opinions of success, hadn't even had a chance yet to have some of our critical thought applied. Just bloop, just slipped right in. Since most of us are working off of that to be happy, we don't know what our values are, and so we're literally spending days doing stuff that has nothing to do with what we care about. That has nothing to do with what we care about. Just doing stuff. And I see it in business all the time. I'll talk to someone and I'll be like, ugh, this person hates their job. This person doesn't care about this project. This person blah, 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 blah. This is not what they want to do. And then I have some clients and stuff, people I talk to, I could tell they love it. So, does your schedule reflect your priorities? When it does, then you have a sense of direction and clarity. And boy, does that really make enough. When you have direction and you are clear about your needs and your actions and why you do your actions. Another way to let life be enough is by instilling manufactured boredom. I said it. Manufactured boredom. What does that mean? It means, another way you can put it is, instead of multitasking, you seek deep activity. One activity. I'm not gonna lie. I'd be at the grocery store and people be on the phone. I'm like, how are you on the phone? Like having full on like gossipy conversations. It's usually women. Oh yeah, so. And I'm human, so I'm looking at them like, you are, and maybe they don't feel this way. This is just my human judgmental mind. Like, you're ruining this shopping experience. It's already kind of, annoying enough. You gotta be in the store sometimes because the stores, what do the stores do? They blast music and they have these harsh lights, which I don't like. So I'm like, okay. So you have all this stimuli and you're on the phone and you're trying to figure out what to put in your cart, and then you're gonna go to the aisle and you're gonna be on the phone while the person's beep, 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 beep. I'm like, ringing up your, like, what a way to ruin a perfectly good opportunity for, it could be manufactured boredom for some, but just deep activity. I'm here to do one thing. Buy groceries. I would like to be present with the fruits and the meats and the cheeses. One thing at a time. I swear to God. It seems like the most simple advice. People, Alex, how do you? God, people have been asking me some weird questions in these interviews lately. How do you balance? How do you do this? And my answers are so like after school program. They're like, I think people ask me things and they are kind of expecting this like, oh, complex answer. Most of the time I just want to be like, oh, I just try to do one thing at a time. Just like our mamas told us, I'm not invent nothing. One thing at a time. If you have to bring up the groceries, tire, shoe, lock the car, people will try to do all that at once. When you do one item each, you see how much more effective it is. It's like that with everything. Cooking is obviously my teaching for that. Manufactured boredom in cooking. Oof. Cutting garlic. Oof. Why do I do it? Not to suffer, not to, walk away and being like, oh, I know how to handle boredom. It's not that. What I'm doing is I'm monitoring my stimuli and I'm creating voids of stimuli so I become more sensitive so that enough is enough. That's why. Because if I can't be present with garlic, then I've lost my path. That's the way I see it. You might have some like really ambitious, workaholic or something that tells me, oh God, what the hell is this lady talking about? It's more than that. That's fine. If that's what works for you. Again, I do believe that after a certain point, that's all we really want at the end. What we want usually is what we already have. We just can't see it because we're using some kind of image and some kind of idea of success that is not ours. Well, I want to work really, there's that comic. It's pretty famous. I've seen it float around in the internet a lot. The kid was like, Dad, why do I have to go to school? Well, because, you need to be able to get a job. And then the kid's like, well, why do I need to get a job? And it's like, well, you need to be able to make money. And he's like, well, why do you need to make money? Well, so you can provide for your family and relax at home. And then he goes, isn't that what I'm doing now? And, by no means am I saying people shouldn't go work. Work is very important, everyone. I'm not even being sarcastic, like I'm dead ass. Work is very important. I think we should work. Point of preservation. Nuance. I feel like in America you say, oh, you got to work, and it means you have to work yourself to death. No, it means you just have to work, and that's it. And then 4:00 comes, or 5, or whatever, and then you just put it away. For the love of God. Enough is enough. No, nothing is worth your time and attention. No money is worth the anything dominating your time and attention. What do you think life is made of? It's made of time and attention. Your consciousness. So I feel, these are obvious reminders, but I think they are timely reminders, refreshing reminders, and I wanted to talk about them today because if there's any time to feel enough, it is this week, it is this time. What technologies are enough? What meals? What sleep cycles? What conversations? What is hitting that quota of fulfillment of, I'm good with this. I'm not saying to be frugal. I'm not saying to settle by any means. There is a difference between settling and pursuing a gaping hole of illusions of success. There's a big difference. People are like, oh, well, you think people should just settle. Perhaps. Not with the definition of settling that we think about, like settling is this bad thing. No, settling is just like, yeah, settle in. Settle into this life. Stop chasing that P. Diddy music video. He don't even live like that. Y'all seen the video of Loon? Loon he's a Muslim now. He has this video and he's like, yeah, all that music video shit was fake, and he feels bad because he knows what type of impressionability that created for his audience, which was, let's be honest, it wasn't grown people, it was kids. So, God, sometimes I talk and I'm like, wow, I sound like such an old person / bitter old head, whatever. But, all I really care about is, when we can be fascinated about everyday life, ordinary, plain, sincere, imperfect life. Enough becomes enough. Life becomes enough. Smiles, food, the simple things. They're not this half-empty feeling. There's not this feeling that you need more. You feel abundant. Lao Tzu quote, "To have plenty is to be confused." The quote I mentioned a few episodes back, the man, who kind of understands this abundance and enough, not too much, but enough, because there's just as many problems in having too much. I think that's the idea is, oh, well, if I have more than I need, then that's good. No. And I'm not just talking about money. I'm talking about resources in general. Because the point of the quote that I had quoted a few episodes back. It was saying something like, when you know enough is enough, then you leave the gold in the mountains, you leave the pearls in the sea. This idea that things can still be precious and valuable where they are, but to hoard them at an extent that we do is a sign of confusion. It's an illusion. Oh, you think because you mine the gold out that it's yours? That ultimately it does not belong, to the planet? I mean, it is what it is. Gold is a very valuable currency. Not gonna front there. But I'm saying more symbolically about resources. So, and ideas of success. Because I don't want y'all to be mad at me when y'all find out how much gold I have. Oh, God. But yeah, it's the symbolism of resource and just, yeah, enough being enough. Enough friendship, enough warmth, enough clothes, enough food, enough sleep. Oh, honey, please. If most of us had enough sleep, you would see the world change. Enough. Let ordinary life be enough. And that is what I'm ending with this episode. Let me know your thoughts. Tweet me, DM me. See how much of a lack of this idea we have in our tech, right? And people have been tweeting and showing me like how when they're listening to tech news now and they're listening it into this different light, and you see this very aggressive Western ideology so unashamedly like kind of expressed. So what's the word, like it's the default attitude that we must invest so much in this without clarity or an understanding of what preserves our humanity. What is that point of preservation for us as a collective species? So I hope you have a great sustaining holiday week. And I'm sure that we will continue this conversation in social media. I'm very grateful. Thank you for your listenership. We have some exciting projects launching in Q1 that I think you guys will like. And I'm super grateful for you and feel very honored to be talking about this subject matter. So have a great one and enjoy the rest of your week. Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Alex Wolf Podcast. If you enjoyed this episode, please leave a review. And if you aren't already, make sure you're subscribed to this podcast on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you listen to your podcasts. For more resources on innovation, economics, and culture, visit alexwolf.co/newsletter and sign up for my email list. Thanks.